Привет!
Hi,
Объектив
the M.Zuiko Digital ED 12-100 f4 IS Pro belongs to the top line of Olympus lenses. The Pro models provide high picture quality, they have weather sealing, hold the frost to minus 10 degrees centigrade and allow professional usage. The Pro line of M.Zuiko Digital brand now consists of 9 models. The budget standard line consists of 8 models and the middle premium line of 7. The 12-100 lens on Micro Four Thirds system cameras covers the focal length from 24 to 200 equivalent millimeters. Clearly, the very wide zoom range, more than 8 times, is the main feature of this lens and determines its strongest point, versatility. But the specs of any lens are always in some balance. Wide zoom is cool, but what's the price we pay for it? What do we lose mounting the 12-100 lens on a camera? At first glance, it's the fast aperture. To some extent, yes, f4 is not too bright. However, if we compare this lens not to the fast primes, which are obviously products of another category, but to standard zoom lenses like, for example, Zuiko 12-40 f2.8, it's just a one-step loss. Or even less, if you remember that the triple zoom lenses of our brands often have the aperture range of 2.8 to 4, while here we have a constant aperture of 4 at the 8 times zoom, so it's not a loss at all. But still, miracles do not happen. What's the compromise? I'll try to puzzle it out. Mounting the lens on a camera, it's the Olympus flagship EM1 Mark II, we get a pretty hefty pack from the mirrorless standards. I guess the 12-100 lens is one of the largest standard lenses in mirrorless systems. However, from the professional point of view, and this gear is positioned as professional, the set is still quite compact. At least me was not tensed by either its size or weight. There are 2 rings on the lens barrel for zooming and manual focusing. The zoom ring is broad, almost 3 centimeters. It has a solid running. The full rotation angle is about 80 degrees. The inner barrel extends for about 42 millimeters. There are focal length values on the zoom ring. These are absolute values. To get the equivalent film values, we have to multiply them by 2. The focus ring is narrower. Like with other Zuiko Pro lenses, you can switch to manual focusing mode by 2 means. First, from the camera. In this case, the electrical drive is engaged. The ring rotation does not move the lens directly, but just gives orders to the focusing motor. The user can hardly notice this. Focusing works fine, both by feel and by precision, especially if the focus peaking is turned on in camera. Another way is to switch the lens to the mechanical mode, simply by moving the ring in the direction of the camera, to a click. It's very convenient. You can turn the manual focusing on and off instantly without using the menu. The focus distance scale opens in meters and feet. On the ends of the range, the ring stops. It does not rotate endlessly, like in the electrical mode. The lens has an internal focusing. Its length doesn't change while focusing, and the front lens doesn't rotate. It allows usage of gradient and polarizing filters of 72 mm in diameter. It also improves robustness of the weather sealing. There is also an image stabilization system switch. You probably know that all the Olympus system cameras have the in-camera image stabilization, which uses the sensor shift. So any lens, even the third-party one, becomes stabilized when mounted on the camera. The 12-100 is the second lens in the Zuiko Digital lineup. The 300x4 was the first, with the in-lens image stabilization. It may work together with the in-camera system on compatible cameras, and this improves the effectiveness of the stabilization. The LFN button is placed below. It's programmable. You can assign different functions to it. in the camera menu, more than 25 functions. The lens hood is included. It's plastic. It has anti-glare corrugation here. It gets on the lens with a click, and there is a button lock. You can put the hood on the lens upside down, blades to the camera. I don't like that there is only one lock button. I mean that when you mount the lens hood, not looking onto it, you can place it in two ways. The button may get either to the left or to the right, and you have to kind of search for it. The other standard Zuiko zoom lens, 12-40 Pro, has two lock buttons. That's more convenient. However, one button makes the design simpler and more reliable. Now let's get to the tests. The 8x zoom is great. I especially like that the zoom range starts not from 28 equivalent millimeters, which is often the case for zoom lenses, but from 24. Here you can see the situation where the wide angle is essential. It would be almost impossible to make a shot with a 28mm lens. You can't step back, so either the spire wouldn't get in frame or the ground. But it all gets in with a 24mm lens. I increase the focal length, shooting from the same point. Then we get far beyond the limits of an ordinary 3x zoom standard lens, or even 5x. I reach the 200 equivalent millimeters. Here is the angel on the spire of the Peter and Paul's Cathedral. It's the full frame, and this is the 1:1 crop. Changing the focal length, we can not only catch some details or sections of the frame, but to change the overall composition and feel of the same scene. At the long end of the zoom range, any telephoto lens compresses the perspective, brings far and closer objects together. This shot is made at f4 and almost everything is in focus. If the main subject is far, it's hard to separate it from the background. And even when it's closer, at a couple of meters like here, we can get some space, but still the background blur is not very strong. Nevertheless, focusing even closer, the lens can blur the background while strong enough. As for the magnification, here is the biggest scale you can get at 100mm. By the way, the closest focusing distance of this lens is 15 centimeters. It's at the widest angle. And you remember that it's measured from the sensor, so you can focus on a subject located just 1 centimeter from the front lens. However, capturing a flat object like this from a short distance is usually a bad idea. Bigger focal lengths give better results. Of course, you can make portraits with a 12-100 lens, although it can't blur the background like the fast primes do. The effective image stabilization system of Olympus cameras, coupled with the in-lens stabilizer, allows taking pictures of the city at night, for example, without a tripod. It's a handheld shot at 140 equivalent millimeters. The shutter speed is 1/10 of a second. So it's a 4 steps advantage, without any problem, just typical. If your hands are strong, you can get even more. It's hard to notice any vignetting at the pictures. Here's a shot made with parameters which could result in vignetting: the widest angle of 12mm and open apertures of f4, 5.68, 4, 5.68. I made a lot of efforts to catch some ghosting of flare. I kept shooting against the sun, I put the sun in the frame and left it out. The lens showed a very strong resistance to ghosting and flare. Here's the worst case I managed to get intentionally at one of the shots. I also like how the lens, and the camera of course, rendered this difficult area. With the sun in the frame, it's smooth, without artifacts. And I've never noticed any chromatic aberrations on the images. In most practical cases, the combination of a focal length and aperture does not lead to a strong background blur. However, if we use a telephoto part of the zoom range, a small object located closely, and the fully open aperture, we can get pictures like these ones. Anyway, whether the blur is strong or not, the bokeh is always soft and calm, nice to look at. Here is the street lights of a city at night. Now let's get deeper into the night shots with bright light sources. Here the focus is at the clown, which is about 10 centimeters tall. First, the longest focal length. We get the strongest background blur. This is full a frame, no crop I mean. Then the focal length of 50 millimeters. Let's have a bit closer look.
Цветовые пятна выглядят очень хорошо, ровные и по форме, и по заполнению. Никаких колец.
I like the light spots very much. They are nice rounded, evenly filled, no rings or bubbles. Sometimes you can notice some ripples or some heptagons from the 7-blade aperture, but those effects are faint. There are no cat eyes at all. I mean the effect when at the corners the light spots lose their roundness. This is often the case for telephoto lenses, but not with Zuiko 12-100. Generally, this lens produces a high-quality bokeh. This is the Christmas tree lights, shot from a 2-meter distance. The focus is very close. The autofocus of this lens is very fast, both in street shots and in my autofocus test, when I make quick refocusing between the close and the far objects.
Объектив показал очень высокую скорость автофокуса. Смотрим на 50
We have
миллиметрах.
50 millimeters here. At the wide angle, autofocusing is blazingly fast. At the telephoto end, you can notice some slowing, but it's still very quick for the telephoto lens. That was the single autofocus, and now the continuous. At 100 millimeters, and on 57. I tested the autofocus of the Zuiko 12-100 lens coupled with Olympus M1 Mark II camera shooting motorsport. It was a round of the Russian Rally Championship. The conditions for autofocus were maybe not extremely hard, but still difficult. The car races at the speed of 100 miles per hour and more. At the spots I was shooting, slower, about 60 to 80 miles per hour, but still it runs up to 30 or 40 meters per second. When the car goes directly towards the camera or from it, there is no problem to get it in frame. But for autofocus system, it's not the easiest situation. I mostly use the continuous autofocusing with tracking, mechanical shutter in the slow continuous mode L, which is 10 frames per second, with refocusing on each frame. In a tenth of a second between the shots, a car covers 3 to 4 meters. The autofocus handled it very well. I can't tell that each and every frame was in focus. About 1 of 5 was slightly out of focus, but still I got a lot of sharp shots to choose from. As the car gets closer, the lateral or side part of its movement starts playing the main role. From the autofocus point of view, distance to subject changes not very fast, but the photographer is really challenged to make nice panning. When a car runs past you at 30 meters per second, it's not very easy to follow it accurately, to get a blurred background and a sharp car. You need some practice to do that, so not all of my shots were successful. As the car moved, not only I made panning, but also some zooming. Mostly it did not confuse the autofocus. Only if I changed focal length very fast, from telephoto to wide angle, autofocus usually lost its subject. For it, the picture changed dramatically, almost completely, just like starting the burst from the very beginning. However, one shot was usually enough for the camera to cope with the situation, and further shots were in focus again. Overall, I was much pleased with the way how the set of EM1 Mark II and the 12-100 lens performed. The gear did not limit me. On the contrary, I felt a huge potential of it. I am sure that in good pro's hands it can serve as a great photo instrument. The resolution test. First, with a special focus target. The size of it is about 53 by 40 centimeters. Custom white balance, exposure shift of +2/3, shot in JPEG of highest quality. Besides the video review you are watching, I've got a text version as well on my website. The link is in the description to this video. You can examine those examples with no rush or download some full-size test shots. You can also compare results of this test to another set of camera plus lens, which I make in every review. Besides the native for the EM1 Mark II sensor resolution of 20 megapixels, I also tested this lens in the high resolution mode, which is implemented in some Olympus cameras. Here it's 50 megapixels. Jumping ahead a bit, I may say that all the tests taken give an answer to the question I put in the beginning. What's the price for the versatility which the wide zoom range provides? My answer is, the 12-100 lens has a very narrow range of working apertures. You can use without ifs and buts the aperture range from f4 to f8. There are no brighter aperture values at all, and as you close the aperture, the sharpness starts to decline. In the other Zuiko lenses, usually the resolution loss at f11 is almost not visible. At f16 it's noticeable, and you should avoid f22. In case of 12-100 lens, it's shifted, noticeable, though not critical, loss at f11, and you'd better avoid f16 if possible. Shall we consider this property, I mean the narrow working aperture range, as a fault of this lens? Well, having practically no other faults, formally yes. To a certain extent it reduces flexibility of control over the depth of field. However, we couldn't expect that this lens can replace the fast primes for shooting portraits with blurred background, right? And it's unlikely to design the lens, for example, 12-100 f2.8 for a reasonable price. So, to my opinion, the versatility provided by the 24-200 equivalent zoom range more than outweighs that formal flaw. By the way, close to the telephoto end, I decided to compare this lens to the Zuiko 75 f1.8 lens. It's one of the sharpest lenses in the Zuiko lineup. Well, let's the crop scroll, and I briefly summarize everything. The main feature of the M.Zuiko Digital ED 12-100 f4 IS Pro lens is the very wide, more than 8 times zoom range. And the strongest point of this lens is its huge versatility. You can shoot sports, weddings, documentary, everything that requires fast reaction to rapid events and changing situations. The wide angle of 24 equivalent millimeters will come in handy for cityscapes, interiors and architecture. And of course, Zuiko 12-100 will serve as a great travel zoom lens. You can take only one lens with you and you are fully armed. It may seem that you'll have to pay a lot for this kind of versatility, but no, the designers have balanced the characteristics of this lens with a pinpoint precision. The lens speed of f4 can't match the prime lenses, but for the 8 times zoom lens it's excellent. The in-lens optical stabilization system, which can work together with in-camera stabilization of compatible Olympus models, provides extra benefits for handheld shooting in low-light situations. The lens makes very nice images with no visible flaws, with soft and pleasant bokeh, although the blur is not very strong. At the optimal aperture range, the resolution is high and uniformity is good throughout the frame. M.Zuiko 12-100 f4 Pro is an admirable option for those who need versatility in the first place. The Micro Four Thirds system does have faster lenses, which produce exceptional bokeh, or cover extremely far edges of the zoom range from both sides. However, it is 12-100 which can deal with the broadest range of challenges, while its fast focusing and wireless sealing allows professional usage. Well, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, don't hesitate to subscribe.